Welcome everyone. We've been away for a little while, but we're back and we're going to be doing one of our topics that we've done before on our investing counterpoint today. So Daniel, great to have you back. And as you know, because these topics aren't a surprise to us, we're doing another video on silver because it's been actually 2 years since our first video on silver, and we did another one last year. And to make it an annual ritual, I guess we're going to do one this year.
Yeah, exactly. Besides, it seems to come back in the news on the same cycle.
I don't know what it is. I mean, it's obviously inflation, demand. There's all kinds of things. When we were postulating a couple of years ago, it was really, our first video was based on the fact that the physical was leaving the vaults in London. And do you know, is that still the case? Is that still what's going on? Because what we've seen since we started talking about it is about a 50% price increase in the price of in silver over that time, and it's a little worse than gold, but not terribly. But do you know what's been going on?
Yeah, I looked at the charts, particularly in London bullion market, and since our last video, the silver like a year ago kind of stayed stable, low on the new low level of
Hmm.
physical metal. But in January of 25, there was a big drop again, and
Hmm.
we'll show the chart on the screen. The idea, I think that, and we're not just gonna talk about silver. You cannot talk about silver in isolation from gold because ultimately, I think that despite all the industrial demand and so on, the real performance from silver will come from it following gold, following possible gold revaluation. And before we talk about it, I want to just establish a few facts that just happened in the last couple of weeks. They seem disparate, but I think if I really list them like this together, you will see the connection here. Okay, so we can, and I'm gonna put them in not in a chronological order because they all happen pretty closely. I don't know exactly what preceded what, but we know for a fact that there's a supply situation with gold developing. In particular, we know that a bunch of gold from London was moved to United States over the past few weeks. Massive quantities of physical gold. It's not really a secret. It's been spoken about in London. Andrew Bailey, who's like essentially a Treasury Secretary in the UK, he couldn't even. He said he couldn't get to work one day because there's all these like armed guards and the gold is just streaming
Wow.
out of vaults. I mean, this sounds like surreal because we did talk about the physical gold situation on our channel, and the real question is why. Okay, the motivation that they're giving us is, well, they're trying to get ahead of Trump tariffs. Now, I don't know if I really buy that. I can't imagine Trump really, putting tariffs on gold or silver. That would be insane, actually. That would be really insane because, in some sense, yes, US has a lot of gold uh, stored in Fort Knox or whatever. We'll get to that. But to put US in a further disadvantage to, let's say, China, who's been gobbling up gold to like there's no tomorrow. I don't think that would ever be done. I can't imagine that, hey, there's going to be tariff on gold. And that's what we have to move like tons of gold over. It just seems to me like a implausible excuse for that. Something else must be going on. Okay.
Maybe it's
And
only gold that comes from China.
huh?
Only gold that comes from China we're going to put tariffs on. I mean, who knows? I mean,
Yeah,
that
well,
seems like a really.
exactly. Yeah, so we're gonna identify the DNA of gold, but even so, China, that would be a moot point because China buys gold. It doesn't export any gold. It exports everything else. So it does buy a lot of gold and encourages its populace to buy gold as a way to skirt capital controls. Okay, so the second thing that came out recently was a Goldman Sachs report where they estimated that China is buying up an order of magnitude more gold than they're reporting. And they're reporting huge quantities to be sure. So supposedly they're buying much more. Now I don't know how they could estimate that precisely, but they do have some indirect measures which suggest that China is buying up a lot more gold than they let on. Okay. At the same time, when this gold was being moved from London to United States, all of a sudden in South Korea, which is, people should know that in Asia, gold and silver are very popular metals with the populace, right? In the United States, it used to be so, but paradoxically, it is not. most of the retail users are actually sellers of silver and gold right now. They sell it at the pawn shop or coin shops or whatever, which is actually unbelievable to me. But that's the case. I saw a lot of stories on that. But South Korea, there are a lot of buyers of metals there. Basically, on the same day or a couple of days after this ruckus happened with the physical gold, announces that there are no more physical gold bars for sale or coins.
Who announced that?
Banks, all South Korean banks,
Oh, all South
said they
Korean
have
bank.
no gold.
Hmm.
Okay. Very suspicious. What this suggests to me is that not just the London gold is moving to the United States, but probably other, probably all gold, whatever's loose is moving across the ocean to United States. Okay. Almost at the same time, Elon Musk, I guess a quasi government official, announces that, well, I don't think he announced it, he supports the idea of auditing the gold reserves in Fort Knox. Okay. So that's a very serious development. That's a huge
Hmm.
development because this kind of scrutiny. So we have to understand that it's not even about whether these reserves are real, whether they're there. I probably tend to think they're probably there. I don't know why, what would be the reason for the United States government to sell those gold bars? I mean, U.S. really was never short of cash. There was never a real need for that. Now, I'm sure if there was a need, U.S. government wouldn't think twice about selling it and not telling anybody. But I just don't know that there's any logic that
Right.
why would it be sold? There's just no
Right.
reason. Okay, so it's probably there. But to have such high profile official or businessman or both to suggest that we audited really is a PR move, right? Now, what's the goal of that PR move? The consequence of it, whether intended or unintended, is to further stir up the hype around the metal, which like goes against everything that we saw before. Before, all of the business, big business, banks, government, they try to dampen. They really try to
Hmm.
dampen any noise around gold because gold is really inconvenient in the dollar system. It's supposed to be an indicator of money devaluation, of money printing, and yet it was not because it was very closely really manipulated, closely controlled, and so even the string of events I'm describing here are kind of all very unlikely, and they're all happening at the same time. But that's not all. That's not all. In February, JP Morgan, who turns out to me, actually, I was shocked to learn a few days ago that they are the custodians for the GLD, for the gold and silver ETFs. And they became the custodians the year after they were convicted as a major manipulator of the price of those metals. They paid a $925 million fine. Their profit from these supposedly illegal activities was actually $1 billion, so they were still positive on it. And right the year after, they became the custodians. I'm sure there's a logic to it. I just I'm not
Sure.
gonna get into it. So J.P. Morgan reported that being the custodians of the physical metal, they delivered metal for $4 billion in February, physical for delivery.
Hmm.
That is probably one of the highest quantities ever in history of physical metal because most of the gold trading happens in paper markets. Nobody asks for physical delivery.
Well, this
And
is
so,
interesting. So let me tell you about what RemAI said. So we have a software for
see it
those
show on the screen, yeah.
that those that know.
Well, I should say that RemAI is a software, probably one of the reasons we didn't do so many videos. We developed AI software that acts as an analyst and writes research reports. It's now available for sale or for trial, and you can ask it to write research reports on many different topics.
So, reinforcing a lot of what you've been saying here, I said, was gold moved? I mean, you asked that, I didn't know it. So, I said, was gold moved? And it tells me that it's been moved. Um, Primarily concerns over the trade war, which is exactly what you said. But here's what you're talking about now: that major banks, including J.P. Morgan and HSBC, are leading this movement in response. They're saying it's saying it's in response to the widening gap in gold prices, but maybe there's a lot more like what you're talking about. And then it talks about all the security measures to do this massive transfer of gold from London to the U.S. All the security that's needed, and then further to the point, it talks about the increased delivery times for gold in London which suggests a shortage linked to this
Was
transatlantic
that was
movement.
gonna be my next point? Yeah,
Yeah. So
exactly.
I mean, it's really interesting, right? I mean, this is
Yeah,
Remy. I mean, I just went and got some information, and we'll give it more color here. But this is a really interesting point from from our software about exactly what we're talking about. So we can
yeah.
go in and get quite a bit of information.
Yeah, RAM AI is actually not like ChatGPT. It actually uses up to the minute information from different databases. So one thing there, that the explanation that it gives, some of it is very valuable. Some of it I don't buy. I really don't buy that. I mean, think about the price differential explanation, and then I've heard that too as well. Other than tariffs, there's a price difference for physical metal. I mean, it's kind of laughable. Think about the amount of metal, even if it's $4 billion. Let's say the price differential was 10%, and it is not. Okay, so you're gonna incur all this security nightmare of moving gold across the
Yeah.
ocean for 10% of $4 billion. I mean, that's probably like amounts to one night out, like one late night dinner for JP Morgan executives across the world or something like that. I just don't buy it. I think there's something else going on, even though, I think that answers, that does it does tell you at least what is being said in the press, right? And REM AI can do much more than that. It can
Well, I
analyze
mean, your point
returns
is
and so on.
if there is a arbitrage opportunity, so to speak, it would have to be done in on a scale like that to make it work because of all those measures involved. I mean, so you're talking about 10%, $4 billion or four
But
hundred
there's
billion
not. I
dollars.
mean, I just even made it 10% for argument's sake. There's
No, no,
not.
I know. I'm just saying if it is that much, I mean, after the security and all that kind of stuff, you're probably still talking about hundreds of millions. I mean, so if it
Massive
is
losses.
it is if it is that big, it could that could explain something, but you'd have to do it on that kind of scale. That's the only way to take
Yeah,
advantage of
but
it.
also think about the PR effect of the think of the effect on the psyche of the market. I think the unintended consequences are orders and orders of magnitude larger than any profit you can have from this.
Yeah, yeah,
So if these unintended consequences are being incurred, meaning that Elon Musk says that we're going to audit Fort Knox, all this movement happens across the ocean. South Korean banks run out of gold all of a sudden. There's got to be a very major reason for that. That's a risk to shake the market like that, to confirm what essentially were conspiracy theories, right? Like that outright, is got to be there's got to be some big reason for it, right? And the J.P. Morgan is delivering this physical to whom? Who is taking the delivery of $4 billion of gold? We don't know. We just see that it's being delivered. Okay. At the same time, and the final note, which I think is actually most shocking out of all of this, just a couple of days ago, Scott Bessent, who's the Treasury Secretary of the United States, standing next to President Trump, says the following almost verbatim. He says, "We really are looking to monetize the balance sheet of the United States for American people. We're going to be looking at best practices around the world on how to do that, and we're gonna do that very soon. Okay, there's lots to unpack here, right? We'll put the link to the video below, but I'm gonna not even gonna comment on looking at the best practices around the world. Like, why would United States, with all its financial prowess, need to look at what, let's say, like China is doing or something? That's not clear to me. I think it's just a way to deflect kind of the questions. Like, we're going to be looking at it. But the point is, like, what does it mean to monetize the balance sheet of the United States? The assets, right? They're not talking about, right. This is not obviously debt monetization. It's asset monetization. What assets does the United States government have? Land. Are they going to monetize the land? No, I don't think they're going to issue financial securities. First of all, in the U.S. government doesn't own, I think, most of the land. It would be kind of a very, very crazy scenario for U.S. to actually, go ahead and make the land available to the financial instruments. But so the inevitable conclusion is he's talking about gold,
yeah.
and then it's all connected, right? And I'm gonna go out on
Well,
a limb.
it can be
Well, it's
land too.
connected that they're okay if they're gonna create some financial instruments, right, to try to remedy the debt situation in the United States. Let's say a debt-backed treasury or something. Then everything checks out. Then they need the gold from all over the world. Then they need to audit what's in Fort Knox. Then all these things actually do make sense, and that's actually a shocking development. And the reason it's connected to silver is that silver is going to follow. Silver is lagged, but but it will certainly follow. But I'm going to stop for a minute, let you comment, Jan.
Well, I did want to get back to silver because what we've been talking about for a while is the wide gap between, one of the theories on silver is, so we've outlined some of the, fundamentals on silver in previous videos, but another thing that was less fundamental was the widening gap between gold and silver, the ratio. And the theory is that's got to narrow, right, at some point, and that can either be gold coming down or silver going up. We've had some silver going up, but this ratio hasn't really narrowed too
It's
dramatically.
widened. It's
Yeah,
when we last spoke, it was
yes, it's
80.
widened. It's
Now
widened.
it's over 90.
Yeah.
It's near historical highs. I think that, well, to my mind, it's inevitable that silver catch up. However, when is the question? And one more point that I didn't mention is that Basel III agreements are coming into effect in July 2025, essentially making gold the reserve asset. It becomes a tier one or tier zero risk asset, just like a treasury, essentially a riskless asset. So we're seeing some major game happening, some kind of game, and I believe, and I will conjecture that, in my opinion, there's going to be a two-tiered financial system coming, and it's not coming this year, maybe not even during the Trump term, maybe the next term, but the two-tiered financial system, to my mind, is going to be one is going to be fully digital tier. So you're going to have things like stable coins, right, that are already there, that will buy treasuries. So they're going to support the US dollar. And this new system, by the way, is going to be a dollar system again. There's not going to be any bricks or anything like that. We've explained in past videos why that whole thing is overblown. So the stable coins will buy treasuries. There's going to be XRP Ripple as an international SWIFT settlement system. There's going to be Bitcoin as an alternative to gold. And then there's going to be some things like Hedera for tokenization or Stella Lumens and so on. Now, what's actually interesting conjecture here is that it was clear, it was very, very clear that Bitcoin at some point, right? There was some point during Biden administration where the government actually tried to curtail it in a big way, right? Operation Choke Point and so on. But at some point, with the new administration, there was a huge pump of Bitcoin. Not just Bitcoin, but other cryptocurrencies, altcoins, they have come down since. But it was undeniable that it looked like a purposeful pump, if you will, right? In the terminology of market speculation or manipulation, it was a pump, purposeful pump of cryptocurrencies. And in my opinion, when I saw that, I was like, okay, they're doing it because they're building this digital tier of the new system. They want the money to go in there and so on and so forth. Now, after all these developments, I'm wondering if this wasn't a way to divert capital. It's like a head fake. Divert capital into crypto so you can buy more physical gold for the next phase. And that is becoming, and I like that's actually very plausible because the gold situation didn't develop today. It was clearly developing over the last few months, but yet it was prolonged. And this basically because the gold price was rising well toward the end of 24, and there were clearly situations, the physical gold questions were arising. And so I'm wondering if this wasn't like the whole situation where, well, let's pump up the crypto, the capital goes there, all the digital gold. And there is, even though I think Bitcoin is going to go much higher, I mean, there is no digital gold is not digital, that's the
Yeah.
point. But let's move the capital over there and try to collect it. And now we're coming up to a part of the game where it's no longer possible to hide it, and now we're really entering kind of a new system with a two-tiered system where kind of select few, the banks and so on, are going to have access to gold-backed, kind of a gold-backed system within the next few years, whereas most of the other people will be in the digital currencies. But that's my conjecture. But I think that the developments are so amazing. Even any one of these things I described to you would be newsworthy, highly newsworthy. Them happening together in the course of 2 weeks is, really like an alarm bell, and it calls for radical kind of theories, and that's kind of a radical theory, yeah.
Well, I mean, getting back to the issue with silver, I mean, you know, I think so. Where do we think silver goes? Because we're going to do another video on the crypto
I
industries.
think that the silver, I think that silver right now is the most undervalued asset in history, simply because thinking just one step ahead, what happens when gold does become kind of a reserve asset, or actually not kind of a, but the actual, it is a reserve asset, or backing the currency, or backing the treasuries, which would be the same thing. Well, that means that gold will become pretty much unavailable for almost everybody
Yeah.
other than the big banks and very, very wealthy people. But there are a lot of people in the world that are very wealthy, but not very, very wealthy, right? They may have hundreds of millions of dollars, and they might not be able to get gold at a reasonable price. They're going to start buying silver, and silver will catch up. It's just because the reason for that is silver and gold fundamentally have very similar properties, very, very similar, except silver has industrial use, but I don't think it's really going to matter a great deal. They have the same properties, but the ratio, right now, the ratio of mined silver to gold is like 8 to 1, actually, and the market ratio is 90 to 1. How is that possible?
Right.
There's never been an imbalance like that held up for long. Now, if you said that if we move back a month or two ago before all this stuff happened, and you ask me, Daniel, when do you think it will happen? I could say anywhere from 3 to 5 years, silver will go back to at least 40 to 1, maybe 30 to 1, maybe even lower. It will overshoot, as usually a bull market does. But now with the events happening, I'm pretty confident it will happen relatively soon. Within like 1 year, silver will catch up, simply because the end game for gold is near, and as soon as the end game, and by end game I mean that it becomes very difficult to obtain. The premiums rise, or like in London right now, 8 week waiting time in a spot market. I mean, in London, normal waiting time, as I was told, is like 3 days or something.
Hmm.
Now they have to wait 8 weeks. The only reason London bullion market is not in default, well, I don't know what the legal fine print says over there. Maybe there's some cop out, but I think the reason that people are not suing is because they realize that when you start suing, you'll get nothing. It's better to wait for 8 weeks. But 8 weeks is a pretty crazy amount of time to wait for a gold bar that you paid for. With these interest rates, like in dollars, 8 weeks just on the risk-free rate is a significant amount of
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
So we're talking about historical events. Now, I think we'll see much more historical events, but we're definitely talking about something major breaking, or more likely intended kind of next step in the evolution of the financial system, because we all know that the current system is not sustainable, right? All these obligations and so on. But actually bringing in gold to the forefront in the financial system, which was happening anyway with Basel III, which was scheduled to go into effect in 25 for a long time now. Um, this is shocking. Now, I will say this, that in addition to my crazy theory that pump of the crypto was a specific diversion from physical metal acquisition. By the way, silver is being acquired too. Look at LBMA vaults. We're all talking about gold, but that's because gold is in the news, because gold has to be reported much more. There's a lot more reporting around gold. It's actually Basel III, asset and so on. But same thing happening with silver. London bullion market vaults in January had a rapid drop in silver stocks. Okay, so same thing is really happening with silver. What I think is an interesting question now, not a theory, but a question. Given that, and I assume that people are doing this are smart. I think it's a very bad assumption to think that people in power are stupid. I mean, that's like a lot of people. That's their cop out. That's how they cope with life. Is like, yeah, they're doing all these things, but I'm smart, and they're not. And I think they're probably not stupid. They know financial system, so they took a huge gamble. That's a huge gamble because basically suppressed gold price and suppressed silver price are really one of the cornerstones of the current financial system. Now, to wake up the people to this idea that there could be shortage of physical metal on the official level, not some from gold bugs, on YouTube, is a major gamble, you would say. I think you would only take that for a very, very good reason. Now,
Mm.
what that reason is, I don't know, again, I think it's some sort of backing of the dollar with gold, actually, not the whole dollar, but some very specific dollars.
Well, I guess time will tell. I mean, it's interesting when we start doing these audits and we figure out how much we actually have. I mean, there's a question of like which specific dollars and how much gold can you actually get. I mean, there's a reason that we're not, dollar denominated anymore. And so how much can we really get to back dollars?
Well, I've heard a theory, and I don't think I don't think that's right. But and it actually does make sense on a strictly mathematical financial level. I think on a psychological level, it's too risky. That if the gold were to be revalued tomorrow at 10 times the current price, all of a sudden U.S. dollar would be backed by like
Right.
half a U.S. dollar. So United States would be basically all of a sudden it would be in a great financial situation. Now I don't think that's plausible because what that would do to the markets. I mean, how many people would now rush into physical metals and abandon the paper markets, abandon, crypto and so on? I don't know that the system would, so you would be like, curing a headache by cutting off a head. Uh, but it's an interesting theory. I'm
Well,
guessing there's something
yeah.
that will happen that we don't expect, but it's got to be something in the general area that we outlined here.
Yeah, I'm not sure anyone can unilaterally, just 10 times, 10x the price and expect to like be selling and buying on that market.
Oh, easy, easy. Because actually, the gold price is suppressed in a big, big way, I think. So all you would have to do is you have to let it go, and you'd have to establish it. The United States government has a long track record of targeting metals prices, particularly silver, by the way. We had a video about silver, but it turned out to be more about gold. But we'll do another one about silver specifically. Like a couple of, United States has a long history with silver, as you know, in the 19th century. I don't know if you heard this, there was a law that was called Crime of 1863, I believe, 1863. It was actually a law that was passed by Senator Sherman, who was a brother of the General Sherman, who was a Civil War, very kind
Yeah.
of brutal, but I guess heroic. That's a separate discussion.
Brother North,
So
yeah.
his brother passed a law where he tricked the Congress essentially into believing that the law is inconsequential. There was a lot of mundane detail about the Treasury and the Mint, and in there he slipped a provision that basically silver is demonetized. No more silver dollars are created. It caused incredible, just crazy repercussions around the economy. Like it basically killed some businesses and so on. And there was a huge movement the latter half of the 19th century. The whole political struggle was around silver. William Jennings Bryan had the most famous political speech in the history, I think. Probably, to my mind, if you take all the speeches in history, it's probably second most famous speech to, Mark Antony giving a speech at the funeral of the Caesar. Basically, the speech was a cross of gold speech, where he said that, don't nail our nation on a cross of gold because he believed that the gold is advantageous to bankers, whereas silver is advantageous to kind of common people, and which is true today. Again, it's actually very,
Right.
very true today. And so William Jennings Bryan had this massive, fight about it. I mean, most people don't know, but like a children's story, Wizard of Oz, by Franklin Baum, was actually written as an allegory on the silver gold battle. If you
Wow.
recall, Dorothy took the silver shoes from the evil witch, and she walked on the yellow brick road, which is a
Right.
road of gold. And then when she went to the city of the wizard, actually she went through
The Emerald City.
something like six hallways and three stairwells, which is Crime of 1863. So there was like a whole lot of allegory. It was a huge thing. Gold versus silver was a huge thing in the latter half of 19th century. Believe it or not, I believe we're going to revisit that. When gold goes, then the silver will follow, and there'll be a big struggle because the silver will be like more of like a real money for. Well, you know the saying, the gold is the money of kings, and the silver is the money of gentlemen.
Right.
So we're gonna see this thing play out again, I think, in some way, shape, or form. But that's we have
So,
another separate historical silver
so I
video.
looked it up, and it's the crime of 1873, not
73.
63.
Sorry, that's right,
It's
73.
it's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's about demonetizing silver, removing silver from the official list of coins that could be minted, and basically not recognizing it. And the reason why, exactly as you said, supporters of free silver dubbed it the crime of 1873 because they believed it hurt farmers, laborers, and anyone in debt by constraining the money supply and favoring creditors in the banking sector.
And it did. It very
Exactly
much
what, yeah.
did. And actually, you know what's happening now? What we're seeing in like all these things I described in the last 2 weeks, it's the crime of 2025. It's happening again. Essentially, what we're going to see is remonetization of gold, which is owned by very few people.
Well, I mean, then it's not even the silver that we should be talking about. It might follow along, but there's going to be a continuing widening if that's the one that's being,
No,
purchased
but
in
you
this
know
way.
what happened afterward? If you look at history, the popular pressure on silver was so high that there was a middle road found. United States, and I started this saying that the United States targeted high silver price. It was just buying silver just to maintain a high price to not monetize. So it was like,
Yeah.
okay, how can we go and alleviate this anger short of monetizing silver? Well, we target and the purchases of silver by U.S. government targeting a price continued in the 19th century, in the 20th century. It continued all the way. You know who stopped it was JFK, actually.
But, but, to me, like, why would I mess around with silver if gold is the one that, I mean, so if I'm trying to do something to silver to make sure that gold, that it keeps up with gold, or so that it's not, we don't have this public backlash, why wouldn't I would still buy gold right now because that is the one that's going to cause these other effects. So buying gold is the one that should give you the bigger return over the next, few years, however long your time horizon is, relative to silver, even though silver is undervalued relative to gold, based on those ratios.
Except that historically, when the ratios reach this high, silver violently caught up every time. So you'd be
Yeah.
playing against like
But it's
very
been two
long
years. It hasn't
financial
violently caught
history.
up. Yeah.
And so I would rather bet on history. I think that the government doesn't have to start buying silver. I think the industry will be buying silver for electricity. I think people will be buying silver. Remember, we live in an age where most people are investing, many people are investing in the markets. And if you recall this whole, meme stock situation with Reddit and when like stocks were just
GameStop. Yeah.
moved because a bunch of people went in, I think a similar thing, like if those markets were available to people in 19th century, they would bid up silver themselves without the government just because they thought like this is our metal, this is our livelihood, and so on and so forth. So I really think that regardless of why, the history shows that silver catches up every time, and I don't believe that this time will be different.
Well, it might take a while though, because it's taken 2 years so far, and
Sure.
not that it's that it's not that far behind over the time that we've been doing this. You're only talking about a 10%, so it's not like gold has so radically outperformed silver that you're
Yeah.
unhappy that you bought silver. But maybe the answer is to buy both.
I don't know the time frame, but my sense, based on the situation, because the gold situation went ahead so quickly, I really don't believe it will take that long for silver to catch up. Maybe 1 year, maybe, but not 5 years this time. But we'll see.
Okay. Well, let's leave it there for today. Good to be back. Good to have these conversations, Daniel, and good to have our new RemAI, companion to help me catch up with certain events.
Yeah, we'll use our neural network in these videos more, but please write in the comments what topics you want to cover. We're definitely going to cover crypto, going to do more silver. We're going to do some specific on risk management and also on AI. Today, big news, Microsoft came out with a quantum chip, supposedly quantum computing chip. I'm gonna try to research that because I'm of the opinion that it's not really real at this point, but I will research it. We'll do a separate video on the quantum computing. Thank you, everybody. Write in the comments whether you agree, disagree, what topics you want. Take care.
Thank you.